Hi, all. Thank you for joining me this evening. I'm sure there'll probably be a few more people that pop in as we get rolling here. So forgive me if I stop momentarily to let people in the session here. I'm doing things a little bit different this evening than I've done in the past, and it's really because these two sessions in particular, many of them kind of bug me. The fact that they have to do with the returns themselves, but they don't have a lot to do with uh, the way we prepare taxes. Okay, so the um, the these two sessions, like the first one, I'm going to do it backwards too, on top of everything else. So session four is about employee compensation. Basically talks about W-2s and other forms of um, income reporting. And then the session three, which I'll do after this one, is it's called basics of tax filing. Okay, so they're on the very basic level, and they ask some questions that bug me that you guys have to answer those questions because of the fact that when you do the material or do a tax return in our software, you don't actually have to remember like what line of the 1040 does the income go on. Okay, our software does that for you automatically. So that's why I'm going to do things a little bit differently on this one. I'm going to start out by going through some of the slides for the employee compensation portion for section four. And then from there, I'm going to show you how you guys can actually skip over the uh, main pieces of the session and jump right to the assessment. Because once you watch this with me live, you don't really need to go through all the steps that they take you through during the self-paced section. Okay, so I'm gonna jump right in here, and we're gonna go with the employee compensation form. Okay, so these are the objectives for this session. Okay, we're going to describe the information provided on the taxpayer's W-2 form, identify appropriate actions for items that are correctly or incorrect that entered incorrectly on a W-2 form. That's exceedingly rare. Uh, 99%, probably much more than that, of W-2s are correct. You will come across things that you'll ask the taxpayer, is this right? You worked there all year and you only made, $6,000. And they could be like, ooh, no, that's not right at all. I was making $16 an hour. I was working full time. That just doesn't add up. So there are some things every once in a while they'll have to go back to their employer and say, this W-2 doesn't seem to be correct. Can we take a look at the records and reissue a corrected W-2 form? It also talks about some of the other items that are listed on the W-2 form. And the reason I'm doing this one first is because you look at the W-2 on session three and kind of determine what what items go where on the tax return. Okay, so it makes sense to go over the W-2 first, at least in my mind. Okay, so probably the easiest way to do this is, just go through some of the W-2 forms and point out what information is located. Okay. Um, the W-2 form plainly is the form that is issued to an employee who just makes normal wages. Okay. So there's a couple different types of employees. There's W-2 employees, and there's also 1099 contract employees. Actually, I've got a hand up here. Let's see here. And I'm sorry, it just says your phone number on the screen, so I don't know. It doesn't list your name, so I apologize. Can you? I'll unmute you if you want to go ahead and ask a question. Oh, it looks like you got to unmute yourself if you got the question.
Oh.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Can you hear me, Brian?
Yes, I sure can.
It's Jessica.
Oh, hi, Jessica.
I was not able to log in with my email. It wanted my email to log into Microsoft Teams, and so I can't see anything. I'm just called in.
Okay, there is an option for. Let me show you something here. There's an option for not having to have Teams or anything like that. Let's see. I'll show that option to you real quick here.
I can't see anything.
Oh, right. So, well, let me pull it up so I can describe it to you. Okay, so see last
Okay.
week. All right. So when you pulled it up, when you clicked on the link, there should have been a place where you could say continue on this browser. Did you see that, or did it just make you go to a login screen?
Okay, so I click on the link and it goes to Microsoft Teams, and now it says join meeting or sign in and join. And I clicked join meeting, and it still made me sign in. Wait, it's different now. Hang on, maybe it'll let me this time.
Okay.
Okay, it's letting me. Okay, I'm gonna hang
Okay.
up and.
Okay.
All right.
Sounds good.
Thanks.
Thanks. Okay, I see you in now. Okay, so um, and we have one other person that is on just a phone call, so you can either you can of course stay on and listen, and then I will publish the recording of this by tomorrow mid morning. It takes a while for it to create it and everything like that, and then I'll have to upload it to YouTube, so it takes some time. But I'll send it out via email by mid morning tomorrow, so you can watch it, um, and get the full effect. Or otherwise, we also have. I'll do this again on Sunday. Okay. So back to types of employees. All right. So we have W-2 employees, which are just regular everyday employees. So that's like, you get a job pretty much anywhere. You are considered an employee. You use their equipment. You follow their schedule. Those are the types of things that make you a W-2 employee. For those types of situations, the employer has to pay certain portions of what's called the FICA tax, which is Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, and the employer pays part of it. Okay, the employee and the employer split it. On a 1099 employee, it's not really an employee, I shouldn't say that. 1099 contract worker, they don't use the company's equipment. A lot of people, like let's say on construction jobs, are 1099, so they get $14 an hour, but they bring their own tools. They show up to a job site. It's not owned by the employer, and they work. Okay, then they're issued a 1099, and they have to report it as self-employment income. Okay, uh, but most people get W-2s. So W-2s show how much you get paid, shows withholdings, it shows other compensation throughout the year, and then um, those have to be distributed by law. They have to be distributed by January 31st of the tax year. Okay, so this coming January 31st, everyone who worked in 2021 should get a W 2 issued to them by any employer that they worked for. Okay, so there's a few different kinds of copies. These used to be a lot more relevant back when their electronic copies of things weren't as prevalent. So copy um, there's copies that are for the employee, and there's copies that are sent out by the employer. Okay, so the only ones that are relevant to you guys, the ones that you guys will see employee or clients bring in, are copies B and C and copy 2. Okay, so usually people will have like a master copy, and then there'll be 3 attached copies, maybe at the top or at the bottom. They come in different formats, but this is the basic layout of a W-2. Whether it's copy B, copy C, or copy 2, it doesn't really matter that much. It used to be a bigger deal, but you can basically use any one of them because people can easily make copies. It doesn't really matter what copy they bring anymore. So on here in um, the basic layout shows this is the employee's social security number. Okay, so this is where your social security number shows up. There are many different formats of these, but in box A, you'll see a social security number. In box B, you'll see the employer's identification number, which is their EIN. That allows them to uh, employ individuals. Okay, you must have an EIN number from the federal government to actually employ individuals. In box C, it's got the employer's address. In box D is called a control number, which may or may not be there. It's basically an optional piece of information. The box E is the actual client's information. Okay, so then let's jump over to box 1. That's where you've got your wages and other compensation. You've got in box 2, you've got your federal tax withheld. Okay, so this individual made $32,721.59. Of that, the employer withheld $4,437.18 and actually sent that stuff to the federal government. Okay, this boxes 3 and 5 show the Social Security wages and the Medicare wages, respectively. And then the box 4 and box 6 here show Social Security tax withheld and Medicare tax withheld. Okay, so that's the employees portion of those taxes. In addition to that, you can see in box these 7, 8, 9, and 10, generally speaking, they're not as common to see anything in there. You will have some tips if the person is in a position where they get tips, those will be listed there. Social Security tips is where you'll see it. Allocated tips is when someone they didn't report their tips to their employer, so their employer basically said, well, in all likelihood, this person earned X amount in tips, and so they go ahead and put it in there. Box 12A is one where you're going to see some information. Okay, this is where you see retirement plans, you see the cost of an employee's health insurance. It shows various pieces of information. Okay, and then there's other. Generally speaking, we don't worry about that. Then down here at the bottom, it's the state information and the local information. Okay, so those of you who are lucky enough to live in an area that has city taxes, this is where you'll find the city tax information listed there. Okay. So as I was discussing earlier, the most common form of taxable income is the W-2. There are other types of income, but we deal with W-2 primarily, along with a little bit of self-employment income. So this starts to talk about where I was saying that in our program, we don't need to know that the wages and income go in box 1 of the 1040 form, okay, with this arrow, because our program, it just asks you, where did this person work, and then you fill out the box 1, 3, 5, and then it automatically calculates everything to put onto line 1 on the 1040. Okay. So then this goes through what I pointed out earlier, where you can find the Social Security wages, Medicare wages, Social Security tips. So then this is where the withholdings go for the federal. But again, it doesn't really matter in terms of when we're actually doing it, because the program does that all for you. Okay. And then it talks about the percentages of Social Security Medicare wages, which is not something we need to really worry about either, right? So this talks about the other. Let's see, D, I guess is this has D is for retirement, uh, uh, basically withholdings by the employee. We've also got codes for the medical insurance and that kind of thing. Okay, so this is going to go into a knowledge check. What I'm going to do here, we're almost. Let's see. So this is going to start asking you about the information that is on the tax return, and we're going to actually do a sample of a quiz or the assessment inside tax school here in a minute. But in order for, we're just going to jump over the knowledge check and go back to, so this is the incorrect information portions and how to handle incorrect information on a tax return. So if you come across a taxpayer's address when you're looking over the W-2 and you notice the taxpayer's address on the W-2 is not correct, you just go ahead and enter in the taxpayer's correct information. Okay. In situations where there's an incorrect social security number, incorrect name, or incorrect dollar amount, that W-2 has to be reissued by the employer in order to correctly file the tax return. If you move forward with it, um, the person will end up having to do an amended return, and that's going to delay refunds and stuff like that. So we don't want that to happen. So if you do come across something when you're reviewing the W-2, definitely check those things: social security number, name, and when you discuss the information that's on the W-2, talk about the dollar amount. Make sure that's a reasonable amount too. That basically that it just makes sense. Okay. Um, a very rare occurrence is you will have fraudulent W-2s. Okay, this generally speaking happens when we're doing some type of advance product where people will print out W-2s that are not real. They're not issued by a real employer, and people bring them in strictly to get the refund advance, and then they just never show up again. So um, you do need to be wary of that. Uh, I would say it only comes up like, well, we only catch it like maybe one or two times a season, and we file 5,000 tax returns. So it's not very common at all. You do need to also make sure that you don't uh, accidentally put in duplicate copies of the W-2. Sometimes people will come and they've printed them off at home because so many people now get them, online. They get it emailed to them. ADP sends them a link. They click on the link. They go print them off. So do make sure that you've got, just one W-2 per job in the software. It helps you do that as well. And um, look for anything that's not computer generated, handwritten. Incredibly rare. Does happen from time to time, but you definitely want to talk to a supervisor if you get a non-computer generated W-2. Also, keep an eye out for any very round numbers on a W-2 in particular. Like, let's say you've got one that just is $20,000 flat. That's odd that someone that would be paid an hourly wage or even a salary ends up with a flat dollar amount. That just doesn't happen. So keep an eye out for those things. Okay. Another thing would be an unusually high federal income tax withheld. So let's say the person made $20,000 throughout the year, but they had $10,000 in withholdings for federal. That's not right. I mean, it's it's possible, but in all any circumstances I've ever seen, something's going on there that's a problem. Okay, and so it needs to be addressed. And it does say that the round numbers here and missing state amounts is a kind of a red flag too. So your due diligence in this area are just that you try to make sure that everything looks legitimate. If it doesn't, then we should contact the employer to find out if it's correct information. Before doing anything like that, definitely get a hold of the supervisor. You guys are going to have many people that are around to help. Okay, whether partway through the season you may be on your own in the offices, but we all communicate through teams and stay in constant communication, and can always you've always got somebody there to help, at least uh, in that way. Whoops. Sorry, I was trying to make sure that my Teams wasn't telling me there was anybody else waiting to get in here. Okay, so yeah, I mean, you guys won't really have to worry about that stuff too much. Um, Oh, and now we're into a knowledge check. So I'm actually gonna jump out here. Okay. Military pay, that's a bigger issue in some other Jackson Hewitt offices where we've got a major military presence. You will have some military uh, people that are paid by the military, whether they're full time or they could be reservists also. But there's some specific things we need to look at when considering military pay, and we'll get into that when we're doing the assessment. Okay. Allowances. I'm kind of gonna jump through here, just trying to hit on the most important things on in this area, just to give you guys some of the highlights, and then from there I'm actually going to do the assessment with you and show you some tricks on how to find the information that you're looking for. Okay. Because there's no way that you can really remember all of this, um, especially in the format that they give it to you. Okay. So I'm actually going to go into this is session 4. Okay. I started with session 4, then I'm going to go back to session 3. Um, excuse me. So I'm actually in the session right now. Okay. Once we go through all this information, or if you go through this and you were to say get less than a 70% on your assessment, once you restart it, you can actually click right here and it jumps right to the assessment, and you don't even have to go through any of these other, uh, portions of the training. Okay. So we're just going to jump down to assessment, and I'm gonna go ahead and start this one here. So this has what box number on Form W-2 contains the employee's federal income tax withheld? Well, like I said, I mean, I know the answer, but I've been doing this for years, okay? So what I want to do is show you guys some resources that you can basically find the answers, okay? 'Cause my goal is to get all of you through this course as easily as possible, because I want to hire every single one of you, honestly. We're, it's a great experience, and we need as many of you as we possibly can, okay? So when you're in an assessment, you can actually, there are these places where you can go. You can go up here to resources. You click on resources and then go to participant manual. This is actually like a PDF of the whole presentation. Okay. So, so sorry about that. All right. Our question was, what box number in Form W-2 contains the employee federal income tax withheld? Okay. So we're going to go to the, the resources and the, what do I call it? Participant manual. Okay. This is participant manual. And in order to find that answer, I'm just going to scroll down here where we got a sample of our W-2 and look for federal income tax withheld. So we're looking at box 2. Okay. So if we go to this, what box number on the Form W-2 contains the employee's federal income tax withheld? I'm going to go ahead and hit box 2 and submit. Okay, we got our first correct answer. I'm not going to go through all of them, but I'm just showing you guys where the resources are, because in my mind, there's no possible way to go through this module one time and know all these answers without looking at something. And obviously, they have the resources available for you to look at, so you should use them. Okay. What box number on Form W-2 contains the employee's wages, which are entered on Form 1040, line 1? So that's just the employee wages. Okay, where are the employee wages? We're looking at right here. So it happens to be box 1 that's going on line 1 to 1040. All right, which copy of Form W-2 is attached to the taxpayer's federal income tax return if they file a paper return or is kept with their Form 8879 if they file electronically? So this stuff, yes, you do have to submit a copy if you do a paper tax return. Those are rare. Uh, Most all of our returns are filed electronically. But right here, it says copy B will be filed with the employee's tax return, federal tax return. That's if they're filed on paper. Okay. So I'm not trying to show you guys like how to cheat your way through the system, but I just think that some of this information is not something that really helps you do the job of a tax preparer because our software does almost all of it for you. Okay. The whole tax school is basically an extended um, assessment to that we can get an idea of your capabilities to learn and to solve problems and to stick with something. Okay, and for you guys to go through and find this stuff within this participant manual, I think is just as telling, honestly, um, to find the right information and where to get it. Okay, you can take the assessments as many times as you need to uh, during this process. I I don't have a good way of showing you how to redo that, but if you do need to retake it and you don't any of them and you can't figure out how to do it, reach out to me. No problem. I will help you in any way that I possibly can. Which actually that reminds me that I'm gonna go to the conversation section. If it shows up, there we go. So I've sent all of you guys emails, some text message also, but sometimes I use this text message system that I use on a computer, so it doesn't go directly to my phone. I'm entering a number in right now. This is how you can text me or call me. It goes right to my cell phone. So, feel free to do that at any time you need help with anything. Okay. So I'm gonna jump. So for now, I'm gonna go ahead and leave the session 4. Okay. I think I hope you guys have a pretty good idea of how to, uh, you know, work through the program, maybe have a better understanding of what's needed and what's not needed as far as the information goes. We're never going to have to know what line anything goes on because the profiler, the program that does it, takes care of it all for us. Okay. All right. So I'm going to go to session 3 now, or module 3, or whatever you want to call it, which does the same type of thing. Okay. Both of these sections are very similar to each other, and they're both extremely basic. I recently talked to a student, though, that started talking about concerns about penalties, penalties assessed on tax preparers, starting in chapter 3 or section 3, that concerned her. And whenever they talk about penalties being issued to tax preparers, I want you guys to be aware that we have many safeguards in place that ensure that does not happen. And also, Kathy, the owner, she will, if something like that were to happen, as long as you're following all of our rules and guidelines, she'll hire an attorney for you to make sure that you don't have any negative consequences that come about from being a tax preparer for us. Okay, there are some penalties, and they're meant to stop people from helping. They're made to stop preparers from helping clients cheat on their taxes, essentially. Okay, you guys may or may not be surprised as to what people will do in order to get a better refund, but some of the things are somewhat staggering. Okay, so this one talks about some very basic things: who signs the tax return, where they must sign. So in our software, they sign it at the end, and there's no choices on where to sign. I will tell you that a married couple filing jointly, they must both sign. We can't have a husband sign for a wife or a wife sign for a husband, or I guess politically correct, we can't have a one spouse sign for another spouse. Okay, so that is probably the main takeaway from this one. Okay. It also talks about determining the standard deduction based on someone's filing status. All of that's handled in Profiler. Okay. The software we use makes this job. Um, it takes the easiest things and just puts them aside. Okay. So we can focus on some of the more challenging aspects of the job. The more challenging aspects of the job are things like self-employment, certain rules surrounding credits, and that kind of thing that the program can't determine without our input. But some of this stuff is just um, so easy that the programming does it for us, and we never really even have to think about it. Okay. Another thing is determining a taxpayer's tax liability using a tax table. I mean, I don't know the last time I looked at a tax table. There's no reason for me to look at a tax table based on, using our software. Okay. It also has you basically manually figure someone's refund, um, which isn't that important in because software does it for you. Sorry that I say that so often when describing many of these objectives. There are a couple different ways that clients can get their refunds, and there are also a couple of different options for them paying. Uh, However, outside of our software, it's very limited as far as what it'll show you in here. But people they can get a check from the IRS, they can get a direct deposit into their bank account. We can print them a check at one of our banks and then send it to them in the mail. They can have their fees taken out of the refund. They can pay their fees up front. Um, there's lots of different options, okay? And all of that will be covered later on. Okay, so this one starts talking about some of the schedules involved. Again, this stuff is so heavily handled by Profiler that I feel like it's it's complicated to learn. I mean, profilers are really great software, and it just helps us do a lot of these things without even thinking about them. You don't need to know what schedule the um, child tax credit's on because it just is done in the software for us. So the taxpayers and the tax preparers must sign the return. In most cases, they're using something called a Form 8879, which is a electronic consent form that we can electronically file their tax returns. This shows an example of actually signing a 1040, which the only reason you would do this is if you have to file a paper return, which we'll probably get in. I'm sure we'll get into later. People have to file paper returns now and again due to a couple of different reasons. One, and probably the most common, is they are issued something called a PTIN, or excuse me, an IP PIN, which is a individual protection PIN number. So this is the purpose of it is to make sure that no one else files a tax return on their behalf without them knowing. So some individuals are sent a 6-digit code every January that contains their IP PIN, and that must be entered on their tax return. Otherwise, it can't be filed. or more correctly, it'll reject it. The IRS will reject it and say, please enter the PIN number, essentially. If they don't have the PIN number because maybe the IRS sent it to an old address and they can't retrieve it by some other means, sometimes we have to file on paper, which in this COVID world is a problem because it takes so much longer. I'm actually opening up the session 3 of the exam, of the assessment, because honestly, the next portion of lesson 3, it goes over more W-2 information. It asks like what lines various pieces of information go on, and our time is somewhat limited, and I don't want to, spend time on things that aren't going to help you necessarily as a tax preparer. I just want to make sure that you guys kind of understand where to get these things or where to find these things and help you along your way in tax school. So I'm browsing through the slides at the same time to make sure that I'm not missing anything critically important. And some of these will be brought up in the assessment. So I'm just going to jump into the assessment real quick. I'll close that and then just re-show you where to find it. So when we're in the assessment, I'm going to go ahead and hit next. And here we've got our resources. We want to go to participant manual, and that'll give us the PDF of everything that is inside of this section of tax school. Okay, so what box of Form W-2 shows taxable wages? So, and this is the part of the reason that I'm skipping a lot of this stuff is because this is actually, I think, the same question we already answered, but in session 4. Okay, so the box with taxable wages, I'm going to scroll down here and I'm going to look at the W-2. We've got box 1. So W-2 shows taxable wages. We're looking at box 1. So that's correct. Okay. And these are, you guys are going to, when you actually do them, they're going to be maybe in a different order or even different questions, but it just gives you an idea of where you can find this information. And I honestly think that doing this helps you, learn it. So the amount shown in box 2 of W-2 form is, and this is the same question as before as well. We're looking at box 2. That's our federal income tax withheld. So I'm going to put federal income tax withheld. Now, Perry received a W-2 showing his taxable wages of $33,901 in box 1. How much do you enter on Form 1040 and which line does it go on? Well, it goes on line 1, but that's something that you don't need to know for because our program takes care of it for you. But here are wages, salaries, tips, and it asks you to attach the W-2 form, which doesn't take place in electronic filing, but that's on line 1. Okay, and the amount that he made, it was $33,901 on line 1, and submit that. Okay. So Yvonne received a W-2 showing federal income tax withheld of $1,784 in box 2. How much do you enter on Form 1040 and which line? So that goes on line 25A. And I'm just going to show you on here. This talks about tax liability. It's actually a tax table. Okay, so this is talking about, so federal income tax withholding. This is an illustration 6. It shows you that the withholding amount goes on 25A. So for that, we do this. Okay, so you guys won't always be able to find them necessarily as quickly as I am. I just feel like, especially if you do go through every single portion of the session and you still need help figuring out where these things go, and it makes a lot of sense. It's, I don't know what line the standard deduction goes on. I've been doing this I got my degree in accounting in 2009, and I've been doing it basically, not taxes, but been doing it ever since. And I don't know what line that goes on, and it really doesn't matter. So that's, um, I don't know. I hope that I'm not giving you guys a bad impression of the way I feel about this thing, but it's not something that we need to worry too much about. So I don't want to make it something that's daunting for you guys, thinking, oh man, I got to remember the standard deductions go on line 12. Okay, that's not something that we're going to need to do during, um, while preparing anybody's taxes. Okay, so I changed this format drastically from, trying to go through all the slides. That's what I tried to do the first time or two, and I just wanted to kind of hit on the main points and then show you how to get through the information. I think we've got, I believe, at least one person in here right now who has made substantial progress in the in tax school, and I hope that that she doesn't feel like I've just now revealed a secret that, took her hours to learn. But I need to reach out to you anyway, and you may know who I'm talking about, this upcoming, about a month from now. That's something to discuss coming up. So anyway, the all the information that I presented to you here are at your fingertips through tax school. If you have any questions, concerns, need help with anything at any time, please, give me a call. The phone number again is in the, uh, conversation portion of Teams, and it's also at the bottom of my emails. All my tax school stuff, says my phone number. I think I'm gonna let you guys go early tonight, and please reach out to me with anything that you need. And I would love some feedback on how you felt about this format. Okay, so have a great night, and I hope to talk to you soon. Thanks.